Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the September 11th Remembrance Ceremony. The honor guards are from the Newton Police Department, Newton Fire Department, and Middlesex County Sheriff's Department. Please post the colors.
Honor guard, post colors!
At this time, I'd like to invite Patrick Devlin up to sing the national anthem.
Honor guard, present arms!
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, all the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order up!
I would like to introduce Lucas Johnson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lucas. I invite Rabbi Gershon Siegel to give the invocation.
Almighty God, we gather here today to honor the memories of those who lost their lives 23 years ago on September 11, 2001, in the most horrific terrorist attack against the homeland of our blessed country, the United States of America. Those who lost their lives were not engaged in battle on the battlefield. They were going about their day-to-day activities, contributing to our society, advancing in one way or another the welfare of the communities we live in. They were attacked simply because they were Americans who represented the lofty values of freedom, democracy, and justice, and as a result, they died as American heroes. When we think about their sacrifice, it inspires us to try and make our lives more meaningful and fulfilling. On the one hand, it intensifies our commitment and deepens our determination to pursue what is good and righteous in this world. And on the other hand, it obligates us to battle evil wherever necessary. The element of surprise exploited by the terrorist enemies resulted from the fact that we could not even fathom that there are those who are so morally depraved that they would execute a carefully planned attack by hijacking a passenger plane and flying it into buildings teeming with people and causing devastation while killing thousands. Having awoken to the gruesome reality and of the existence of such groups, and even of countries that support such groups, it obligates us to never be taken by surprise again. We must never forget those murderers those who inspired them, and the millions around the world who cheered them on and called their actions acts of martyrdom. As we remember the 9/11 of 2001, we recognize our obligation to oppose and fight terror any place in the world that it rears its ugly head, especially when terror strikes in Israel, a liberal democracy closely allied with the United States. Israel is on the front lines battling the scourge of terror that threatens the entire civilized world. On October 7th, now another day of infamy among the world's darkest days, Hamas terrorists attacked the homes and communities of southern Israel, brutally torturing, raping, slaughtering civilians, men, women, children, and even infants who were just going about their daily lives. Hamas terrorists savagely murdered nearly 1,200 people that day, including over 40 Americans, and kidnapped hundreds of civilians to hold as hostages and to be used as pawns in its diabolical terrorist goals. We beseech you, our Father in heaven, to give us the strength to help us build a better world where such evil will be eradicated, and to give us the wisdom to protect all those who believe in the sanctity of life and believe that every human being is indeed created in your image. This sacred location, the fire headquarters and the fire station of Newton Center, is an appropriate place to hold a 9/11 commemoration. This venue reminds us that in the wake of the horrendous events of 9/11, we also witnessed and were inspired by the profound acts of dedication, kindness, courage, and love by fellow Americans. Among them were the first responders, like those who serve in this station, who ran into the inferno without hesitation to save others. It was that experience which enabled us to soar above the usual patterns that too often dominate our mundane lives and thoughts. Those, too, are the indelible parts of our memory of America's encounter with the evil of 9/11, for which freedom and true faith are the eternal antidotes. Our gathering today, 23 years later, is indeed a continuation of that devotion toward our fellow Americans. May the memories of those who sacrificed so much continue to be a blessing and an inspiration to us always. Amen.
Please retire the colors.
Honor God, right feet. Forward, march. Left, right. Left, right, up, right, left. Left, right. Left, right. Left, right, left, right, left.
I think Rabbi Gershon Siegel said it best, so I'd like to have a moment of silence to pray for the victims of October 7th and the horrendous attack. May they come home safely. Thank you. I would like at this time also to draw your attention to the bench that was newly installed. Many of you may remember the October 1993 stock fire. It's in honor of all the firefighters that went to that fire and came out kind of damaged. So we pray for them, and we pray for the repose of their souls as well. Thank you. So tonight, I would like to recognize and honor Wells Remy Crothers. Wells lost his life 9/11. He worked in the South Tower on the 104th floor as an equities trader for Sandler O'Neill's. Wells was a Boston College Eagle lacrosse player, and he was just 24 years old. This is Wells' story. His face was covered by a red bandana, the bandana his dad had given him when he was just a child. Wells saved at least 18 people that day, Ling Young recalls hearing a young man say he found the stairs to escape the towers and to follow him. Wells made that trip up the stairs 3 times and saved over 18 people. As he headed up again, the towers collapsed and his body was found with the firefighters along with the red bandana. This summer, I had the opportunity to speak with Allison Carruthers, Wells' mother. I asked her if she would please send a few words about her son, and I will now read her letter. Hello, my name is Allison Carruthers, writing to you as a mother of Wells Remy Carruthers. My son perished at the World Trade Center attack on September 11th, 2001, but not before saving 18 lives from that burning 104 floor sky lobby World Trade II. The second to be struck by the terrorists. Wells has become known as the man in the red bandana for his courageous actions that terrible day. We, the families, are deeply touched by the memorials, ceremonies, and sacred places that have been created to preserve in our lost ones' memories. Our loved ones cannot be brought back to us in the physical sense, but spiritually, they live on in time and memory, which is a great source of comfort to all of us. Wells' example of spirit continues to inspire people of all ages. I travel around the country speaking in schools to students about Wells, and their response is always most positive and encouraging. Through our Red Bandana Project, we have created a series of lessons on leadership, caring for others, team, the power of one, bridging divides, forgiveness, and carpe diem for students of all ages. The Red Bandana Project is very well received. We are deeply grateful and thankful to all of you who created this beautiful monument, and to those of you who attend this 9/11 remembrance ceremony each and every year. Thank you for remembering our loved ones. May their sacrifice at the hands of darkness and evil inspire and energize us all to bring good and light into the world. Warmest regards and much appreciation, Allison Carruthers and family. So to you all, thank you. I would like to invite Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller to the podium to say a few words. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. And thank you, Ginny. And thank you, Rabbi Siegel, for giving tonight's invocation. To the Newton Fire, Newton Police, and Middlesex County Sheriff's Department Honor Guards for presenting the colors. To Patrick Devlin for a beautiful national anthem tonight, following up the one on Friday night before the Newton North football game. To Lucas Johnson, nice job on the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. 23 years. It has been 23 years since terrorists took control of 4 airplanes and murdered 2,977 people, men, women, children, who came from all backgrounds, from all faiths, from all parts of our country, and from all parts of the world. I'm of an age where maybe it was decades ago, but it feels like yesterday to me. We stand together this evening with the memories of those lost etched in our hearts. We stand here with everlasting gratitude for the courage of first responders and their unfathomable bravery, and with continued inspiration from the response of ordinary people who help strangers. And yes, Ginny, including Boston College's Wells Remy Crowther and his red bandana. So we come together on this day every year, not only to remember those lost, but to try to bring comfort to the community who most deeply felt those they personally lost. And tonight, we hold close the families who forever bear the scars of that day. And this includes too many neighbors right here in Newton who lost loved ones. The Bavises, the Farley Hackles, the Humblers, the Jacobs, the Whitmeltzers, the Rosses, the Sallys, the Toyans, and others who were personally and viscerally touched by this tragedy. 23 years ago, as the horror unfolded, we watched evil and horror, death and destruction be met by the courage of first responders running into the flames and towards the chaos. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, first responders reacted with honor and bravery. 413 first responders were among the thousands that died that day. 343 firefighters, 71 law enforcement officers, and 13 paramedics and EMTs who went to work that day and never returned home. In the days, weeks, and months that followed, firefighters and other rescue workers combed through the debris, searching for the remains of the lost. They breathed in tainted air, they touched hazardous materials, and they kept doing their job. So in the years that have followed, more than 340 additional first responders have also lost their lives from 9/11. Countless others are still suffering. So I'm going to ask you guys to turn around for a sec, and we're going to look at the people over there. Because tonight we recognize and thank our Newton firefighters, led by their chief, Greg Gentile. We thank our Newton police officers, led by Chief McMains. And I'm not sure if we've got anybody from Coastal here, our EMTs and our paramedics. Let's pause and say thank you. For all of us know that Newton's first responders honor the thousands of lives lost on 9/11 every day that they come to work. And over, you put your own safety aside as you respond to dangerous calls and terrible tragedies. All of you have my deep gratitude and respect. So we are joined in this gratitude this evening with our superintendent of the Newton Public Schools, Anna Nolan. You'll hear shortly also, to close up the program, from Reverend Mark Caggiano. You'll hear from Newton's Veteran Service Director, Seth Bai, because I know I speak for all of us when we are very grateful to the armed forces and for all those who, inspired by the horror of 9/11, served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Thank you. Representative Ruth Balzer, State Representative, is here with us tonight. And State Representative-elect is by her side. Greg Schwartz is here. We have the President of our City Council, Mark Laredo, the President Emeritus, Lyle Baker, former President Susan Albright. We have Rick Lipoff, Stephen Farrell, David Mickley, Pam Wright, Tariq Lewis, and Lenny Gentile from the City Council here as well. Our thanks really extend to the 9/11 Memorial Committee, to Sandy, to Ginny, to all the committee members. And let me hail and say thank you to Hattie Kerwin-Derrick, who helps from the mayor's office in helping all of this come together. All of you make sure that we commemorate this day with the solemnity it deserves. So in closing, I think of the words of poet Maya Angelou, who spoke in the days just after 9/11 of the unanticipated courage that lies within us, an unanticipated courage called upon in times of unforeseen tragedy. Today, let all of us again summon our courage to remember the unflinching charity we felt for one another in the aftermath of the attack. Let us resurrect the courage to feel again the solidarity we felt with one another. Let us dig deep to find the courage to once again be united, not only in our shared pain of remembering, but in our shared experience as Americans. For we are stronger and better when we work together. We are stronger and better when we act with compassion. We are stronger and better when we reach out with an open heart and an open mind. Just as we did not allow the acts of terrorists on September 11th, 2001 to sow the seeds of hate, nor will we allow the challenges of our times to do so today. Thank you.
Did you want to introduce yourself?
You're right there.
Joining me at the podium, Director of Veterans Services, Seth Bai.
There we go. Work with me. There we go. I'm going to move this. Pardon me while I adjust myself. There we are. Greetings and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. On behalf of the mayor and the staff and the city of Newton, we appreciate that you come together in solidarity every single year, and we get blessed with this wonderful view and this wonderful weather. For those too young to remember, the morning of September 11th, 2001 in America began with the blue, clear skies and ended under a dark, billowing cloud of dust and of rubble and unspeakable terror. Since that day, an approximate 125,000 Massachusetts residents and a total of 1 million New England service members have answered the call to serve in the post-9/11 military operations. More than half of those service members have deployed more than once. Throughout the history, Massachusetts service members have answered the nation's call to support peacekeeping missions all over the globe while simultaneously facing the challenges in readjusting to civilian life. Since the early 1990s, with the end of the Cold War, there has been a steady reduction in the total number of troops in our U.S. military. Although the decline was hotly briefed at the time of the Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm, thereafter the U.S. military continued to reduce its active and reserve forces, and despite the drawdown of military forces, the number of operational deployments increased for frequent peacekeeping missions and humanitarian operations. So now we have our veterans that are here to succeed in providing safety to our nation and flourish in their respective personal and professional lives.
by demonstrating the 3 C's of leadership: character, competence, and commitment. The character of Massachusetts veterans is clearly battle-tested, which reinforces that we must lead by example and operate from our core values. The competence of Massachusetts veterans is present in the many positions they've taken after service. These are our police, our firefighters, teachers, trades workers, legislators, and engineers. The commitment of Massachusetts veterans, especially Newton veterans, is honored and displayed throughout our beloved city. Between our dedicated bridges over the Mass Pike and the monuments that the mayor and I adorn with the massive amount of support from the community each Memorial Day weekend, to our continual usage of our own war memorial here at the auditorium in City Hall. On this anniversary, we pay tribute to our veterans for a job well done and for the last 20+ years of global security. We are grateful for your service and for that our firefighters, police officers, EMTs, and paramedics. God bless you all, and thank you very much.
It is now my pleasure to introduce fellow American Legion Auxiliary member and Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Anna Nolan.
Thank you, Ginny, Sandy, and my sisters in the American Legion Auxiliary. Appreciate and am honored by the invitation. Thank you all for coming today as we gather to remember and honor those who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001. Today we stand together as a community united in grief, united in remembrance, but united in the spirit of resilience that defines us as Americans. I was a 7th grade English teacher in Framingham the morning of 9/11, and it was, as the rabbi said, a day that broke our innocence. I was in my 20s, and my former husband was in flight to the West Coast when all of this occurred. And what I recall vividly was the frantic situation that unfolded as all of the Boston area families realized that their loved ones were in transit or in process. And they were scared, running to our campus, busting open doors, which back then were not locked for safety as they are now, because things truly have changed since 9/11. Everyone was worried that an attack on the rest of our daily lives was imminent or could happen for days on end, worried about the elimination of safety and our comfort, worried about the daily possibility of terrorism introduced to American life. Talking to 7th graders for months after that was very different. Our nation faced numerous unimaginable tragedies on that fateful day, with attacks on the Trade Center, the Pentagon, Flight 93. These all changed the course of history and left us with memories of profound heartbreak and loss of so many loved ones. I mentioned particularly Stuart Meltzer, who worked with my husband at the Gersh Talent Agency in New York for many years, and whose wedding to Lisa we attended. Stuart was a former Newton resident and is now memorialized here, and I say to his family, he is not forgotten. We talked about him last night, a man close to his brothers, a lover of the Red Sox, a Boston guy despite moving to New York City. And Stuart was a loyal friend, a sharp wit, a funny man, and to lose him at 32 with 2 young boys broke all of our hearts. And to his family, Stuart is remembered, but to all the affected families, your loved ones are remembered. But in the midst of those dark days, we also witnessed the most extraordinary, unwavering strength of the human spirit. And this is where I call upon us, again, as my 2 speakers before me said, to honor the first responders that are here and those men and women in the fire and police who modeled for us then the extraordinary way to be American and to rise in courage to save others. In the days and weeks that followed 9/11, we saw the best of America. First responders rushing without hesitation to help others, and we stand in this firehouse to honor those people who responded in the line of duty and those who chose courage and caring over safety and escape. Ordinary citizens became my hero, our heroes, the nation's heroes, risking their own lives to help everyone else. People of all backgrounds, all faiths, walks of life came together for this shared purpose. And these actions weren't just a response to crisis, they were powerful demonstration of the values that define our nation: courage, compassion, unity, and selflessness. As the superintendent of your schools, I think about what it means to educate our children, not just in academics or the historical events of these days, but in the kind of character we hope that they will carry long after they leave our classrooms. And we want our students to excel in math, science, history, and the arts, but more importantly, we want them to grow with a strong moral compass, a sense of empathy, and a commitment to serving others, indeed, to be worthy of Newton and of our nation. The response to 9/11 showed us what it means to be American and taught us that in the face of adversity, we are the strongest when we are together. It reminded us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but determination despite it, and proved that the power of community and kindness can light even dark times. These are the values we aim to instill in our young people who walk through our school doors, and we want our young people to know that they too have the capacity to make a difference. They can be the helpers, they can be the healers, and they can be the leaders of tomorrow. Whether they choose to serve their community, support friends in need, or stand up for what's right, we want them to carry forward the legacy of 9/11 and all that was sacrificed on that day. Carrying this legacy is not just about remembering what was lost, but also celebrating what was found, our shared humanity. So yes, remember those we lost on that day over the years, and since then, due to the ripple effect of health and trauma impacts. But let us commit ourselves to passing on these lessons to the next generation, despite the polarizing and divisive times that Newton and the nation has endured. We will teach our children not to just remember today, but to embody the courage, unity, resilience, that defined our response. And if we commit to this every day, then we ensure that the memory of these loved people live on, and we can continue to honor them not just in the stories that are told, but in the hearts and actions of our young people who are our future leaders. Thank you all for being here today and for remembering and continuing to honor the values of our community and our country and making us strong. Bless you all. Thank you.
Our next speaker is former FAA security officer at Logan Airport after 9/11 and author of 4 best-selling books, Anthony Amore.
Delayed applause, thank you. Good evening. I was invited to speak to you today because I served as a special agent with the Federal Aviation Administration before 9/11, and after September 11th, I worked to rebuild security at Logan International Airport as Assistant Director with the then brand new Transportation Security Administration. In this era of acrimony in Washington, especially during a presidential campaign, which is just coming to a close in 8 weeks, it's difficult to imagine that in 2001, Congress passed and the President signed a sweeping piece of legislation just 2 months after the attacks on our country. The Aviation and Transportation Security Act of 2001 completely transformed how our airports would be secured. While many travelers complain about the TSA, few remember how porous security at airports was before we came on scene. Still fewer remember that after 9/11, public opinion polls showed that the vast majority of Americans believed that aircraft would again be used as weapons of terror. But 23 years later, there have been no successful follow-ups to the horrific and indeed evil attacks against civil aviation. We deployed 1,200 new federal screeners. We built 9 baggage screening facilities and deployed many millions of dollars in new security technologies. It marked the formation of the largest new federal agency since the Air Force was created 54 years previous. TSA formed so quickly that people think of it as our nation's first response to the terrorist attacks on the United States, but it wasn't. The first response took place before the tragic events had even concluded. The passengers aboard United Flight 93, aware that hijackers were not going to land the aircraft safely and simply hold them hostage, as in most previous hijackings, made a pact, and they planned with each other to act. Their courage in storming the cockpit and fighting the terrorists is now the stuff of legend. They fought for their own lives, yes, but they knew from phone calls to loved ones that there was underway an attack on America. So they told their families and friends they loved them, then they prayed, and then they united and fought for their country. The 9/11 Commission believes that the likely target of Flight 93 was the Capitol building. Some maintain that it was the White House. But there is no doubt that together, Todd Beamer, Mark Bingham, Tom Burnett, Jeremy Glick, and their fellow passengers spared the nation from having yet another horrific image etched into our collective memory forever. It mattered to none of those aboard that flight that Burnett was a devout Catholic and daily communicant, or that Bingham was a gay man. Why would it matter? And why would they have asked? What mattered was what united them, their shared humanity and devotion to their country and their fellow man. Before storming the cockpit, none of them asked, wait, who did you vote for? Or are you a liberal or a conservative? They just banded together. They formulated a plan, placed their trust in each other, and said, let's roll. Meanwhile, in New York, the city's firefighters, EMS, and police were putting their lives on the line to save people trapped in the two buildings of the World Trade Center. 2 decades later, we've all heard recordings of scared office workers trapped in the Twin Towers, speaking with 911 operators. Again, no one discussed their differences. They prayed together, reassured each other, and promised to deliver messages to loved ones. We've heard about the fearless responders, first responders, who fearlessly climbed up the stairs into the fire so that others could walk down them safely. When their commanding officers told them to go inside and rescue people, not one of them declined. And I thank you, first responders, who are here this evening, joining my fellow speakers in doing so. It's never enough. And I thank you for the fact that you come to work every single day knowing that you might have to do something very similar. When their commanding officers told them to go inside, they did not decline. Like the heroes of Flight 93, they cared not about race or ethnicity or religion or citizenship status or politics of the people in the buildings, only that they were in need and that they were their fellow men and women and they needed to be saved. The same is true, of course, at the Pentagon. Like you, when I consider September 11th, I feel grief for the victims and their families, many of whom are here today, and it is my great honor to speak to them. I feel awe for the heroism so many exhibited on that day and afterwards. I remember that at one time, not so long ago, 300 million Americans were united as one people. Today, that unity seems a distant memory, but it does not have to be so. We were completely united as one people. Why did we let that go? It is my prayer that we never forget the attacks on our country 23 years ago, that we never forget the lives we lost and the families left behind, and that we never forget our capacity to unite as a nation and as a people. Let that be the legacy of this day, of those heroes, and of this memorial. Thank you.
At this time, I introduce Sandy Young, our fearless leader and my friend and half-sister.
On a lighter note, I'd like to ask the scholarship recipients to come up to the podium, please. After almost 2 years of fundraising, working, and planning for the 9/11 Memorial to be built, we finally have it here in such an appropriate place in all its beauty and symbolism. We can commemorate our 8 Newton neighbors who we lost. We can thank all of our first responders every year for the difficult jobs they do to keep us safe. And we teach our history to our children who were not born yet on September 11th, 2001. That is why our committee felt it was time to give back to the community by offering annual scholarships to our young high school students. This will be the second year that we are able to do this. Our essay question encourages students to visit this memorial and see the facts laid out for them. It was a difficult decision for our judges because the memorial absolutely spoke to them. Our first prize of $1,000 goes to Zach Guzinoff of Newton South, graduating class of 2025. Our second prize goes to Joseph Russo, Newton North class of 2025. And our third prize goes to Sophia Lau, Newton South, graduating class of 2025. That's it. Thank you.
Would we like to begin reading the memorial text and begin our program?
In 2011, at the dedication of our Newton 9/11 Memorial, then Mayor Setti Warren stated to the assembled, "I am proud that local citizens came together to build this memorial. Let us use it to remember those of our neighbors in Newton lost on that devastating September day. Let us also use this memorial to remind ourselves that we must do all we can every day to preserve America's greatness, its traditions of liberty, justice, and opportunity in a peaceful world."
On September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks killed nearly 3,000 innocent men, women, and children in New York City, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The people of Newton, Massachusetts built this memorial in 2012 to remember the neighbors that we lost, those who served that day and thereafter.
At approximately 7 a.m., 3 terrorists leave the Park Inn in Newton to board American Airlines Flight 11 in Boston. At 8:46, Flight 11 crashes into the World Trade Center North Tower.
At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashes into the World Trade Center South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashes into the Pentagon. At 9:58 a.m., the South Tower collapses.
At 10:03 a.m., United Flight 93 crashes into Pennsylvania. Passengers and crew launch a daring counterattack against their 4 hijackers. Minutes into the counterattack, the plane crashes in a remote field and thereby spares an intended target, likely the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapses.
The heroic rescue efforts that day came at a great cost. More than 400 rescuers died. 343 were New York City firefighters, and 13 were EMTs and paramedics.
"37 Port Authority officers were killed that day, 25 officers of the New York City Police Department.
On November 10th, 2001, President George W. Bush said the following in a speech before the United Nations General Assembly. Time is passing, yet for the United States of America, there will be no forgetting September 11th. We will remember every rescuer who died in honor. We will remember every family that lives in grief. We will remember the fire and ash, the last phone calls, the funerals of the children.
Today we remember, in particular, our Newton neighbors who perished on the flights and in the towers. These men and women live in our hearts and our minds.
Mark Bavis, age 31, having played 4 years on Boston University's ice hockey team. Mark was entering his second season as an amateur scout for the Los Angeles Kings when he died on United Airlines Flight 175.
Paige Farley Hackle, age 46. Paige died on American Airlines Flight 11 on her way to California to speak to producers of a spirituality-related radio program that she hoped to host and to visit Disneyland with her friend Ruth and Ruth's 4-year-old daughter, Juliana. Ruth and Juliana died on United Airlines Flight 175.
Nicholas Humber, age 60, with a degree in mechanical engineering from Rensselaer and a master's from Wharton. Nicholas joined the newly created EPA in 1971 and founded the National Waste to Energy and Recycling programs. His work focused on wind-generated fuel, energy, cell technology, and sustainability. He died on Flight 111.
Aaron Jacobs, age 27. Aaron worked with my friend Stuart, whose brother you'll hear from in just a moment, at Cantor Fitzgerald in the North Tower of the World Trade Center. He loved New York as he jogged through Central Park, tasted its ethnic restaurants, and taught skills to its needy. Aaron traveled widely, and he and his fiancée thought they might honeymoon on an African safari.
Stuart Meltzer, 32 years of age when he passed. Loved Newton. He played baseball for the Post Force 40 here in Newton and also continued on to play at Trinity College, where he graduated from. And as the building was falling around him and the building was on fire, and he got a call off to his wife, and he was able to say, "I love you, I'm not coming home. Take care of the children. Stu, you're missed every day." Thank you.
And I'll tell you the story of how I landed with a cane at the end. So here I am. I'm Irene Ross, and I'm going to speak about Richard Barry Ross, age 58. Richard, who died on American's Flight 11, headed the consulting company, the Ross Group. He enjoyed late afternoon excursions in his sailboat off the coast of Rockport with his wife and 3 children. And I would like to introduce who you know, Mr. Lipoff, and he'll tell you about an experience that his father had with Richard.
Thank you. Richard was my neighbor right across the street. And on the morning of 9/11, I was standing in my driveway, and he came down his, and he rolled down his window, and he said, "I took your dad, my dad, Mike Lipoff, who was dying of cancer." He said, "I took him on my boat. He had a good day on Saturday, and I'm going to California for business. And when I come back, I'm going to take him on my sailboat again." He went to the airport and got on Flight 11. And every day I look across the street and I miss him and think about him often.
You know, every year I have been coming here and telling you about, giving you sort of an update on Richard's children, the family, and what's going on with them, and it seems to be very much received well. So I would like to tell you that Abigail Ross Goodman is very successful. She's doing great things. Her 3 daughters, there's Esme, who's the youngest, who has gone off to Berkshire, in the Berkshires private school. Hannah, who is at Beaver, and she'll be graduating this year and going off to college next year. And Rebecca. Rebecca had gone to Vassar, but her dream was to go to Brown because her father went there, and a very close person went there as well. So she is now at Brown. Allison, who was living in Paris for the past 12 years, has 3 fabulous children, speak fluent French. Allison has moved back to Boston, and the children go to the international school, so they'll be very comfortable in the environment. And she and her husband and the 3 children are now living in Brookline. They spend the summers up in Rockport. Franklin, whom is my godson, whom I'm crazy about, but I'm crazy about all of them. All of my nieces and nephews are phenomenal. Franklin just had, not him, his wife, Rachel, they just had a beautiful little girl. And I am so thrilled and excited. And Richard is an incredible dad, incredible. He has been by that little one's side, and she is beautiful. And her name is Sloan Bella Ross. And Richard called me up one day and he said to me, Auntie, Sloan's middle name is not Bella, it's Stella. And he had to correct me because they're both beautiful names to begin with. And I said, okay, fine, I understand. But I want to tell you, it's really a pleasure to be here and to give you an update on my fabulous family, my brother's family. Richard is missed every day. Generally, about 2 months before 9/11, I'm a basket case, and all I do is cry and miss him because I feel his presence. When he first passed away, Franklin called me and he said, Auntie, has Dad come to you? And I said, you know, Franklin, he did. And he was wearing, my mother used to buy him his clothes. Can't remember the name of the shop on Newbury Street, who happens to be my nephew's father or mother, or father. But he was wearing his green raincoat. He was carrying his briefcase, and he said, Renee, I just want to say hi. And I said to him, Richard, oh, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad. He said, I can't talk to you. I have to leave because there are so many people that need me. And that was that. But I want to thank you very much for listening to me. And I will be back next year. And I thank this gentleman for reminding me of something pretty wonderful. Richard was a very, very special guy. Had a big heart. Thank you very much. Oh, let me just tell you one other thing. You'll get a kick out of this. My honey, who I love very much, and who loves me very much, never wants to sleep, pardon the expression, don't get crazy, never wants to sleep too far from me, so he connects himself like right next to me, and I said to him, Howard, I'm on the edge of the bed. I said, you've got to move over. Well, lo and behold, he moved over, and I fell off the bed.
That's
A little humor, and it's the truth. loves me very much. But meanwhile, I'm on a cane and he's on a walker.
Rahma Sali, age 28. She was with her husband, Michael Theodorides, and their unborn child. Rahma grew up in Japan and moved here to Newton. After graduating from Wellesley College, she worked at a local firm in Cambridge. Rahma and her husband died on Flight 11 on their way to a wedding in California. She was 7 months pregnant with her first child. We miss her dearly. Thank you.
Amy E. Toyin, age 24. Amy was in the World Trade Center on 9/11 for a trade show when her fiance Jeff received a call from her cell phone at 8:58 a.m. He saw Amy's caller ID, but then the call ended. Amy's father said, "We had just ordered her wedding dress." Amy was so happy in her life, a woman in love who loved her job.
I now invite Reverend Mark Cangiano to give the benediction.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we gather to remember those that we have lost to violence, lost to intolerance, lost to anger and hatred. Even after these many years, we gather and we remember. For as long as we do so, these men and women will remain in some way among us, lifted up in our memories, remembered again and again for who they were and what they meant to those left behind. Brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, husbands and wives, friends and loved ones. Lights that we look to in our memories, even through the darkness of that terrible day. Even through the long shadows those events have cast across our nation and our world. And we honor those who served in that time of crisis to rescue those trapped and injured, to fight the fires, to search the wreckage, to keep the peace. Men and women who placed themselves in danger. Men and women who continue to suffer long after their time of service. Men and women who lost their lives even as they struggled to save others. As we call to mind those we have lost, as we honor their memories this day, may we also give thanks for the good memories. Memories of family, memories of friendship, memories of love. Memories of who they were and what they have meant to this world. Let us remember them all the days of our lives, and may they be at peace in the eternal embrace of God. Amen.
This concludes our 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony. And thank you all for coming.